From lying about the Holocaust to cozying up to former President Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is no stranger to controversy, but somehow he's managed to stay in power for decades, a feat that has led many to call him the magician. As violence surges in the Middle East, the eyes of the world have turned toward the embattled magician who might have finally run out of tricks.
We will exact a price that will be remembered by them and Israel's other enemies for decades to come.
The escalation of the Israel-Gaza war comes at a time when Netanyahu and his far-right administration are facing numerous controversies. While he has weathered through past storms, some predict that this might spell the end for King Bibi's decades-long career. Who is Benjamin Netanyahu? Born in Tel Aviv in 1949, Netanyahu spent several years during his youth living in the United States before returning to Israel at the age of 18 to join its military. He became a captain of an elite commando unit called Sayeret Matkal and participated in multiple combat missions before he was discharged in 1972, upon which he returned to the U.S. to finish his education at MIT. After his brother Yonatan was killed during a hostage rescue mission, Netanyahu returned to Israel to form an anti-terrorism institute in his name.
In terms of all America's allies, is that it is perhaps the only one who has taken care of itself so far. Israel is giving the United States an extraordinary bargain in the Middle East. It's the one stable democratic ally which the United States can count on.
Netanyahu's time in the U.S. made him an ideal spokesperson for the Israeli occupation of Palestine. In 1984, he was appointed Israel's permanent representative at the United Nations, in which capacity he frequently appeared on TV news shows shilling for his home country and whipping up anti-Palestinian fervor.
What do they plan to do with terrorism? What is the ultimate strategy?
It's to destabilize and to weaken and to terrorize every country in the West, every American interest, every American economic base outside the United States. It's to make America withdraw from various parts of the world and feel that it simply cannot deal with this type of malignant disease that is spreading.
Netanyahu's political career kicked off in 1988 when he joined Israel's far-right Likud party and won a seat in the Knesset, Israel's parliament. The Likud party's hardline platform emphasizes settlement and rejects the idea of a Palestinian state. Netanyahu would later become party chairman and was elected prime minister for the first time in 1996. His first term would be short-lived, however. After agreeing to limited withdrawals from the West Bank angered his far-right supporters, and the first of several corruption scandals tainted his image, Netanyahu was defeated in a 1999 election. He briefly retired from politics until he was appointed Israel's foreign minister in 2002 and then finance minister in 2003, a position he would later resign from in protest of a planned withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. In 2009, Netanyahu regained control of the Likud party and was elected prime minister for a second time. He had agreed to a 10-month freeze on new settlement construction in the West Bank and appeared open to accepting a Palestinian state. Netanyahu would inevitably walk back this position, though he would vociferously deny the flip-flop.
I never retracted my speech in Bar-Ilan University 6 years ago, calling for a demilitarized Palestinian state that recognizes the Jewish state. I don't want a one-state solution. I want a sustainable, peaceful two-state solution, but for that, circumstances have to change.
At the same time, a new administration in the U.S., led by President Barack Obama, began to butt heads with Netanyahu. While still maintaining U.S. support and allyship, Obama pressured Israel into peace talks and condemned Israel's construction of a large Jewish housing development in East Jerusalem. A low point in the relationship between the two leaders came in March of 2015 when Netanyahu addressed Congress and spoke against negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program. The same year, Netanyahu stoked more controversy by falsely claiming that the idea to murder 6 million Jews during the Holocaust was not Adolf Hitler's, but rather the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini. This shocking claim showed the world the depths to which Netanyahu would sink in order to demonize Palestinians and sell himself as the only leader who can provide safety.
Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews. And Haj Amin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. You said, burn them.
Netanyahu found a closer ally in Obama's orange successor, Donald Trump, encountering a kindred spirit in the nationalistic blowhard who stoked fear and division in order to remain in power.
You called for the forces of civilization to confront the forces of barbarism. Mr. President, for 69 years, Israel has been doing precisely that.
In another echo of Trump in 2020, Netanyahu was indicted for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust, a first for a sitting Israeli prime minister. In response, Netanyahu swung even further to the right, embracing populist and nationalist partners in 2022 to form the most right-wing government in Israel's history. One of the government's first actions was to propose sweeping judicial reforms that further strengthened Netanyahu's legislature, prompting massive protests throughout the country. All that brings us to today, where the Israel-Gaza war has upended the region and already unleashed mass suffering on those who live there. Netanyahu, whose approval rating was already in the toilet before the conflict escalated, is facing massive backlash. For a man once known as Mr. Security, many people in Israel are angry at Netanyahu and his coalition for either failing to keep the country safe or potentially allowing the attacks to happen as an excuse to retaliate with escalated violence against Gaza. Even his former sycophant Trump has turned on him.
I'll never forget that Bibi Netanyahu let us down.
Netanyahu is called the magician for his uncanny ability to survive scandals and controversies that would end the career of any other politician. As Israel continues its attacks on Gaza, home to 2 million people, Netanyahu remains in charge of a newly formed war cabinet. But when the dust is settled and the dead are counted, the magic that kept Netanyahu in power for 16 years might have finally run out.